Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Danny. We have just seen Anthony Joshua stop Robert Helenius in round 7 in a heavyweight contest at the O2. Danny, going to give the stage to you here. Main event tonight. It's kind of it maybe ended in a Joshua stoppage, which was most people thought was going to happen. But yeah, there's a few things to digest. What were your thoughts on the fight tonight?
Yeah, obviously the stoppage was one that is probably the image that'll be like beamed around the world, and it was a great right hand, and the way Helenius went down, as he sort of did against Wilder, sort of adds to it. I mean, he was properly knocked out, so credit to Anthony Joshua for that. But like, I know it's almost become boring and a cliche. People go on about the old AJ, this and that, but I refuse to believe that Joshua pre say Ruiz would not have went in there and destroyed Helenius. Like that could have happened at any stage in the fight if Joshua was sort of willing to risk going into the fire. I mean, up until that point, he was seemed content to stand off and try and box with Helenius, and I thought he was having the worst of it. I had it 4-2 in the scorecards at the time of the stoppage. I could have seen 3-3, but 3-3, even 3 rounds of 3 or 4-2 down against Robert Helenius, who's 39 coming 40. What's his best achievement? European champion. I have him as a European level heavyweight. Maybe not even that now, given how faded he is. And this whole like downloading the data and needing the rounds, I don't buy it. So yeah, I'm sure we've other points to get into, but again, sort of more question marks for me.
You mentioned about AJ needing the rounds there. I think I know who you're referring to. So Tony Bellew.
Have you ever heard as much shit in all your life? Like, don't get me wrong, right? I understand the dynamic. No broadcaster has a fully, completely objective commentary. It's just not how the game's played. You've got a product you're trying to promote, and I get that 100%. It would be ideal if it's not the case, and it could be the same in other sports. It's just the way boxing is, and I understand. But you've got Tony Bellew coming out after like 6 rounds or 5.5 rounds or whatever it was. He said it like they tried like all the excuses in the book. Like first of all, he's just having a look. That's what it was after the first 3 rounds. And then when he was still getting outboxed, that I think Anthony Joshua's he's after the rounds. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It swelling under the eye. He's in there with a heavyweight. He can't punch. All the talk this week is about AJ making a statement, going into the Wilder and doing a better job than Wilder, and you've got like Bellew coming out with absolute crap like that. Sorry, I interrupted you there. What was your question?
You're more than welcome to interrupt me about boxing, Dan. You know a lot more than I do. He kind of said it, and I was like, did I just did I just hear that correctly? AJ's got a kind of, you can see he's taking a few punches to the face. He's arguably not winning the fight. He's not just going in there for rounds. He had 12 rounds against Franklin in April. Does he really need another 7, 8, 9, 12 rounds against Helenius? I don't think so. So it was a strange comment, but look, people say things on live TV that they might regret. And thankfully, Andy Lee was there to kind of disagree with him, which I'm glad that somebody did. How did you said you had it 4-2? I did have it 4-2 as well. I think, look, it would have been interesting to see if that fight had continued. Kind of the two gas tanks. Would Helenius have continued to win rounds? But look, it was a fantastic right hand by Joshua. But the phrase "papering over the cracks" sums it up pretty well for me. You've got to remember, Helenius was announced on Tuesday morning. Helenius, yes, he did fight last week, but last week he fought a fat guy who's over 40. He didn't fight a top 10 heavyweight last week. He had trained for a opponent of that caliber last week. So this whole thing about, he only fought a week ago, he's in shape, not necessarily. You're in shape to beat someone who's in front of you. You don't 100%. Necessarily kind of have to have the hardest training camp of your life every single time. If you're coming up in your career and you're fighting journeyman over 4 rounds, you're not going to have a brutal training camp. It's not the same training camp as if you're fighting for a world title. Anyway, I won't go on any
I know,
great.
that's good. That's a really good point you make though, because you know the spiel is coming. You know what's coming. This was Robert Helenius. He was in great shape. He had just had a full camp for this fight a week ago. That's what's coming. That is 100% what's coming here. So it's a good point you make.
Yeah, no, exactly, mate. So it's just, yeah. One thing I want to touch on with you is the comparisons to the Jermaine Franklin fight. Jermaine Franklin fight back in April. A lot of people thought Joshua was going to win via stoppage. Went the full 12 rounds. A bit of a stagnant performance. Not too much happened in that fight. How would you compare that fight and then this fight compared to that stoppage in the 7th round?
Obviously, as you say, the stoppage was really, really impressive. But stoppage aside, at no point in the Jermaine Franklin fight really did I think Anthony Josh is in danger of losing this. More because we saw Franklin against Dylan White, and we can't really punch. He's not a big puncher. At this point, up until the stoppage, I thought there's a chance Joshua could lose here. Helenius had been going to the body a lot, which maybe potentially could have paid dividends down the stretch. Helenius was winning rounds in more convincing fashion than Franklin was. Helenius is a much bigger man, and Helenius a couple of times put Joshua sort of back on his heels. Remember, there was one he caught him with like a left hook. It must have been the 5th or 6th round, like a check left hook. Joshua sort of went back on his heels. So I felt as if there was more jeopardy in this fight. In saying that he's got a stoppage that AJ's backers, Matchroom and 258 will have been hoping for a while, and it was a highlight reel one. So I'm hesitant to say it was a worse performance, but again, a lot of alarm bells.
Yeah, I think I had a brief look on Twitter before this call, and a lot of people are saying similar things as me and you are, perhaps not as politely, but I think obviously you're going to have, as you said, there a spiel. You're going to have kind of a PR perspective of what happened in that fight and what's next. But it's I think, look, in the reality, we all know what happened in those first 6 rounds, and we all know what that first 6 rounds was compared to the Anthony Joshua of 4 or 5 years ago. Final question from me, Danny. Just your thought on like Joshua's, I don't want to say relationship or like progression. His like, what did you think of the corner work tonight? He seems to get on with Derek James, but this is 2 fights now, and what's happened? Like, have they not just gelled enough? Like, what can you add to what I'm trying to say?
See, I started this week actually, and I can't remember if it was, I don't think it actually was in relation necessarily to Anthony Joshua, but I read something, it was either in Twitter and like a YouTube comment, and like it got like loads of traction. It was just like people like, how much does a trainer really matter? Like, I think it might have been in relation to Chris Eubank Jr. going under Bomac, and like, yes, obviously like a top trainer can like fine tune things with a fighter, but like at the end of the day, it's not going to be anyone that's going to turn Joshua into Lennox Lewis. And like the impression we're all under, it's like a sort of mental thing, and that maybe like going to like James is sort of like old school gym and their old school mentality, and in Dallas would maybe like help bring that out of him. But like it's sure it run if it's the way people make out, and it's like the fucking trauma of being knocked out by Rees, a build up of all this pressure of being the nation's darling, and people turning on you like Derek James. He's not a fucking psychologist. He's not a therapist. He's not. That's pretty deep stuff. Like that's not like going into like an old fashioned gym and sparring a bit harder is not going to change that. And technically, I didn't see anything different from Joshua there than we saw in his last 4-5 fights. For me, he's not looked like that sort of vicious combination puncher. I mean, how many combinations did he like go on the front foot and actually throw? He was like throwing left hooks way out of range. So it's 2 fights. It's what, 8 months. I mean, he stuck it out for 2 fights, which is more than he done under Robert Garcia. But I mean, I think the role of a trainer can often be like sort of like overstated, and he's not a miracle worker. Sorry, mate, you've muted yourself.
Sorry, mate. I was muting
Right.
myself, so I didn't interrupt. And I didn't interrupt you with background noise. I'm a bit, yeah, bit surprised, bit disappointed tonight. I thought that Joshua looked really relaxed and composed during fight week. Looked up for it against at the weigh-in yesterday, and we can't have a look before the fight. Certain people are saying, yeah, look, Joshua's bang up for this, despite the late replacement. He wants this fight. So there's no, we can't just have certain things said about him just, not being able to deal with HELENIUS because of this or that. He was up for it. He did agree to it. So yeah, look, it was just a bit of a, strange. It was a bit of a strange one, but look, he's still got
What
that
did you
power.
make of the what did you make of his post-fight celebration,
Um,
given the context?
yeah. First thing I want to say, apparently Robert HELENIUS was receiving oxygen whilst that was going on,
Right.
so I'm not sure it was hugely appropriate. Secondly, I thought Joshua uh, looked fairly relieved in there. I thought he looked like he had a weight taken off his shoulders, which I understand and sympathise with. However, it was Robert HELENIUS. It wasn't Deontay Wilder. It wasn't Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury in there, and that's the
100%.
problem. That was what I thought. What about you?
Mate, 100%. That had the feel of like this is 39-year-old. Like I'm not gonna think, but everyone knows the context of this fight. It's almost like, Man City like doing like an open toss bus parade for beating like Shrewsbury in the League Cup and penalties or something. Or like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I didn't know. I wasn't thinking about it in context of like I didn't realize HELENIUS was getting oxygen. So again, and like you'll see a lot of fighters, but I think as you say, look relieved, and like that's interesting to think about. Like this
Mm,
stoppage, HELENIUS, like it causes that level of outpouring. Like, where are you mentally?
yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure on Joshua. He feels there's a lot of pressure on him from his own, well, from a commercial perspective, really.
Yeah,
If Joshua had lost tonight, then a lot of people aren't making money from him moving forwards. And
yeah.
I think
He didn't
that's
sell. He didn't celebrate his world title against Charles Martin like that.
no,
Like, is it world
you're
title
right.
win?
You're right. You're right. And I just thought again, like I thought I heard Robert HELENIUS receiving oxygen. I thought I heard Costello say that. I think I did. But look, even if he wasn't, like he did get knocked out unconscious, so I felt like you should maybe give it a minute. And I don't know. It felt like the Conor McGregor thing looked a bit scripted to me, considering Conor McGregor's sponsoring the event. So I wasn't a fan of that, but that's maybe a topic for a different story. Yeah, we'll leave things there. Got more we could unpack more. I'm sure we could, and maybe we will in the coming weeks. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Anthony Joshua has stopped Robert HELENIUS inside 7 rounds in a less than convincing performance tonight in London. Danny, thank you very much for joining me. I will speak to you again soon.
Cheers, mate.